She's a pimple and she's trying to get popped by Hulk Jr. himself. Welcome to Bible study, where we are talking about the gospel that is Berserk. Today we got Farnese, the spoiled brat that went from heretic buster to witch. Our introduction to Farnese is perfect because it sets her idealistic nature up for failure. She's a strong-spirited girl with rigid beliefs and an infantile view of the world. She sees the world as black and white, but Berserk, as we know, is much more complex than that, where the main villain, the Hawk, is dressed in a brilliant white, and our vengeful protagonist, the Black Swordsman, is clad in black, where the flow of these black and white events are influenced by the waves of causality, generated from the deepest, darkest depths of the astral world. Farnese's view of the world was extremely small, too small for her to be as stubborn as she once was, very vocally being pompous in her beliefs supported by her very limited view of the world. A girl who has lived her whole life up until this point without a lick of adversity. Every dish and choice being brought to her on a silver platter. Farnese displayed the arrogance of being the absolute voice of reason, of wisdom, though lacking everything required to be deemed as such. A noble birth girl under the age of 20, no, anyone under the age of 20, has not lived enough life to be so sure, certain, and stuck in their ways. Idealists tend to get a bad rap because of the unrealistic expectations they place on the world around them. They seem to want to shape reality instead of live within it. They tend to look down upon those who don't have the luxury to live life as if it's some sort of fairy tale, where the heroes win and the villains lose, where evil is vanquished and good prevails, where love is unconditional and conflict is abandoned for harmony. All of that is to say that in order to think and view the world idealistically, your orders have to be from a place of privilege, where the playing field is so balanced into your favor that the idea of inequality and misfortune is just a concept to you, an idea so detached from lived experience reality that it simply becomes a word used to describe a state of being so far removed from yourself, from a person born into nobility, a viewpoint derived from living a life of luxury. Farnese was born into the prominent Vandimion family, a family that had more bankroll than entire nations. They could comfortably fund exhibits into uncharted lands and war campaigns. She was the medieval form of a credit card baby, where she was more estranged from her parents than her many maids, nannies, and assistants. She grew up her whole life being told yes, but spent just as long looking for a yes from one specific person. This person was her bum-ass dad. Nick was the true example of main fuck them kids. We get he's an extremely busy man. For to have an empire as grandiose as this, you have to be on grind time 24/7, but in many ways he failed as a father. He created a psychotic daughter who had a righteous and devout facade while lacking true character, an extremely soft son who lacks true ambition and courage, a snake-eyed young man who definitely has something malevolent lurking within him, but turned out relatively okay because he was not offered the privilege to be ignorant to the savage, brutal truths of life. He did also have two other sons who seem to be doing well for themselves, whereas one is the general financial manager of the Holy See's accounting office and the joint manager of the Vandimion Bank, and the other is the Grand Governor Generalship. But based on how fucked the other kids are, they are probably cold-hearted, controlling, egotistical megalomaniacs. Outcomes like this are a true mark of a life without real adversities and excessive luxury, because you have to be extremely out of touch with real reality to develop this persona or character. No, to be allowed to develop this personality or character. Because for most people, the average Joe, we learn quick and early and often in very brutal ways that we cannot treat the world like an MMO where we are the main character. We learn early that we have to develop some character to become a character in a much larger story. This story is a book of life, and the utterances of each and every page are written with a quill dipped in the ink of time, etching irreversible events into the logs of history, our history. You learn early that it may not be smart to be rude, because your mom will smack the taste out your mouth. But you are a kid and kids are dumb, so you continue to be rude. Then you go out into the real world as this dumb kid who didn't learn this lesson the first time from the comfort of the calloused hands of your hard-working mother. This dumb kid gets away with being rude a couple times in the real world due to sheer dumb luck, probably from the blessings of prayers from his mother wishing and pleading for the safety of her rowdy son. This dumb kid humiliates a quiet neighborhood boy who holds a grudge and later strangles and kills him. That's exactly it though. Life can be so brutal that the lessons learned may not be for you, but be you. The one who lived to learn this lesson was the dumb kid's little brother, who in seeking validation started to follow his dumb older brother's path. The little bro learned two things the day his beloved brother passed, that being rude is a risky play, and you are not entitled to the privilege of living to learn from your mistakes. Some mistakes can be fatal, so it's best not to make them. Shaping the little brother into a character that doesn't have to learn flaws, as someone like Farnese, who lacked true character because she was raised in an environment that didn't punish mistakes with hard lessons. She went through many assistants because of her heinous antics, and guess what? She was always given another assistant awarded to her just so she can ruin again. You would expect After 3 assistants, someone would put their foot down, but no. This foot was always either attached to a mother too busy living life hedonistically, overindulging, or to a father overseas conquering the world. Farnese was given free rein to do as she pleased without any real repercussions, even if these actions were objectively immoral, from arson, animal executions to attempted murder. Then comes Serpico, who was introduced just to show us how fucked Farnese was, the little tyrant with a torture fetish. They got to bond over her daily crimes that went unreported, from attempted drownings to dog attacks, and blunt force trauma due to rigged horseback riding. Then we later learned through Serpico's backstory the similarities between the demons both Serpico and Farnese fight, and the twisted link between religion and Farnese's sick behavior. Her bedroom window overlooked the cooking of heretics, and she often joined in, with an eerily high level of conviction and enthusiasm. It was here where she finally realized her dream and practiced it, stimulating her torture fetish under the guise of noble duty and religion. What was the culprit here that failed Farnese? Was she already damaged, or did this lifestyle damage her? Was it in her nature to be this wicked, or was it something nurtured within her? Was it her abandonment to solitary confinement behind these beautiful and empty walls? Walls that seemed to stare back at her just as lifelessly as she stared back at them. Was she forcibly detached herself from what she likes because of her relationship with her father? He would have Farnese throw away things she was really attached to because they were old and worthless in his eyes. To her, his word was gospel. His wish was her command. And the first time she objected to her father's wishes, she burned things down. Was this due to her just being stubborn, or is it because deep down she realized that her dream could never be realized, locked away as another man's trophy that collected dust on the shelf of his kingdom? The burning inferno within Farnese engulfs what threatens to quench the pursuit of her dreams. Lord Vandimion arrives and forces Farnese into a political marriage that she does not want to partake in, and she, in a myriad of emotions, burns down the little forest that was her home, the little forest that Lord Vandimion meticulously crafted to appease the little tyrant, whose wrath lay dormant inside, waiting for the day to erupt into this burning inferno. This is the first time Farnese directly defied her father and solidified Lord Vandimion's fear of the unpredictable nature of his daughter. He sends the devil child to a monastery, where the stubborn girl was further indoctrinated, spending her days in tranquil dialogue with God. With heretic tomfoolery on the rise, threatening the socio-economic status of the church and nobility, Farnese took it upon herself as head of the Holy Iron Chain Knights to eradicate them and to provide a blissful pleasure and satisfaction to herself. To her, this wasn't duty, it was play. The higher-up said to Farnese, "Thank you," and she shook their hand with a creepy smile and said, "No, thank you." Chapter 1. Corruption.
All my life, remember praying just to make it home again all my life.
You can argue that it was really enlightenment when she encountered Guts, because he was the catalyst that allowed Farnese to evolve into the person she was destined to be, and opened her eyes to the true vastness of the world, where the world she solely knew actually lied alongside of a much larger and mysterious one. But whenever man gained immense knowledge, getting them closer to playing God, they were always slapped down and punished for it. A tale as old as time itself. If you leave a little kid in the presence of rowdy men in a bar, it's only a matter of time before the kid goes home and says some wild shit. As if the level of wisdom is not met before enlightenment, then it could most definitely be seen as corruption. So I guess corruption is still a fitting name, because as a person, Farnese still lacked real character and conviction. She lacked true wisdom. Like Priscilla, the idealist who clashed with Teresa for a cynical and realistic view of the world, so did Farnese with Guts. Berserk is really a Tom and Jerry parody, because Farnese was Tom and Gus was Jerry. Gus always pulls fast ones to get away, and Farnese and the Holy See are always many steps behind. Let's look back at the perfection that was the Lost Children's chapter that did so many things for the series, but also marked a turning point in Farnese's life, where she learned that what she thought was gospel, her religious beliefs, were in fact not gospel. She gets introduced to fairies, elves, insect monsters, apostles, cracked out dogs, and a possessed horny horse that was looking to do some damage. All through chasing the Black Swordsman, who they deemed as nefarious because of his connection to all the mysterious and unexplainable occurrences. After Guts packs Rosine up, he is packed up by the Holy See and held captive for not even a full night. Hey, these niggas are the worst. They got soloed by an already battered Guts, and they let Puck perform the heist to bust Guts out, and they allowed him to take their leader as hostage. Serpico turns into a demon and begins his pursuit after Guts. This is quickly halted when the demon soul scares Widow Old Horse and he is left without a suitable form of transportation. Then it finally happens. The spoiled brat with a god complex who clung brazenly to the rigid world finally sees truth. Guts, realizing how big of a moment this is, uses this as a means to lecture the girl, because he mercilessly looks down upon those who act holier than thou, when they are truly as ignorant as everyone else, as ignorant as everyone who clings to the rigid world, where those in power are tied to the church, worshipping false gods, where the real ones, the real gods, reward humanity for their sins instead of punishing them, with the behelit being the fetish that turns sinners, demons of humanity, into demigods. Guts looks down upon her from a place of true, unwavering truth and reason. She is the embodiment of the perils of humanity, the shortcomings of authority. The elite lead, but they are usually just as lost as the commoners, the blind pompously leading the blind. Guts says, keep your eyes open, watch. You won't see this, praying to idols. God's putting on a show for us, a miracle on earth. Guts would be the perfect tour guide if he were sentenced to damnation to hell. He understands the weight of the situation, but he doesn't allow this weight to weigh himself down. He just tells it how it is, so nonchalant. Probably because he has experienced miracles worse than hell. Within this mayhem, Farnese tries to escape, and she is so shook that she decides to start speaking to a horse. I order you, allow me to mount you, then run, quickly. No. What? What? That's like being home alone ready to choke the chicken, and someone behind you says, you left the lotion upstairs. What? This horse attempts some despicable acts, and Guts, while putting an end to these despicable acts, remembers the chain of unfortunate events that led him here, chased by the Holy See. This rage provides him the fuel to exorcise the wicked souls of the night. But one soul slips away and possesses Farnese, exposing her dark and lustful desires, turning her into a vessel for her hidden and shameful desires. She's a pimple and she's trying to get popped by Hulk Jr. himself. But Guts got morals, so he didn't take advantage of the situation. But he sure was faking his injury though. You telling me he was too exhausted to get Little Miss Blonde off of him? But he had the energy to swing a 400-pound sword at 70 miles per hour. Aw, stop the cabin. As for Farnese, her view of the world and herself has been shattered. The girl, drunk on God's authority, finally sober. This is what corruption, what the reality-shattering truth can do to a lost soul. This pain, this uncertainty, this extreme state of vulnerability is essential for growth. But with corruption comes enlightenment. Chapter 2, Enlightenment.
Hold on. Let's get this shit. Let's get this shit. Let's get this shit. Let's top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning, top of the morning.
It's funny that in the heart of the conviction arc, Farnese's conviction for her religious and world beliefs waver, are questioned and then rejected for the beliefs of the very ones she would have been drilling to burn at the stake. This little arson demon, making things hot thought, rolls with a gang of heretics. The birth ceremony chapter was wild. From demonic orgies to heretic hunting, Farnese, though being a leader, was really thrown into the mess of things. The chief inquisitor of the Holy See, the king of all that is holy, the prostrating enigma, the block-headed believer, Mazgus and his crew, become heretics. They are given wings and power straight from a world that is not the rigid one, and Farnese with her prior experience cannot be fooled by Maz's facade of pure righteousness. She sees the evil within the disciples and realizes that she may be on the wrong side of history. After Mazgus turns into the thing, she is sure of it. This gut-wrenching realization is put simply in chapter 160. That child, threatened by the Dark Knight, has her imaginary cloak of faith burned away, and is illuminated. A level of enlightenment that left her exposed and vulnerable to the real truths of the world, because she no longer has something to run back to and hide behind, because her whole belief system has been deemed conclusively as a farce that was the foundation of her whole entire existence. Realizing that she really is a lost speck of nothing within a much larger story that she not only failed to understand, but stubbornly rejected. In the eyes of all that is holy, she was really doing the devil's bidding, orchestrating the events, adding to the death toll, increasing the refugee camp's level of mystery and despair in order to bring about the birth of a truly sinister being. The irony here is insane. Those sure they were acting in the light of God, thinking if anything the next prophet will be born, were really laying the groundwork for the Messiah of hell to be materialized. And the one they tried so hard to eliminate was risking his life putting an end to the madness they created. Jesus Christ. Nigga, Berserk gets colder and colder with each and every read. The messages, the irony, the symbolism, the suspense. This makes no sense. But it makes so much sense. Farnese, now really convinced that she may be on the wrong side of history, aligns herself with Guts. Now with the conviction solely for the truth, she declares, I will follow the Black Swordsman. The point where she confidently rejected the richer world and plunged into the real one. This plunge is scary, but with full faith in her new Messiah, she was steeled in her resolve. And just like that, the shape of the world, the shape of Farnese's world, began to crumble. Farnese does a lot of growing from this point. She starts to love others more than she loves herself, and she now has the ability to put herself in harm's way for her comrades. She develops a new glow in her eyes, one of true enlightenment and wisdom. She even cuts off her hair, which is symbolic and significant because she is no longer this fair blonde-headed Disney princess living in a fantasy, but a true warrior hardened from brutal reality. Along her journey, she develops the courage to finally address her father as a peer instead of a subject. Though she failed shortly after when stating her demands, the act was huge for her. A serpico is so real for this. You can tell he truly loves Farnese. He understands the relationship between Farnese and her father, and not only knows but feels the weight of the situation. This feels like the hyperbolic timetable where gravity is 10x, but it's just an illusion, because serpico snaps her out of this Kurenai level genjutsu. This is like seeing your homeboy that you grew up with lose a fight you know he should be winning. You have to be extremely close to someone to be this angered, almost as if you were personally offended by them taking the L, selling themselves short, or devaluing themselves. When you devalue yourself, the ones that are hurt the most are your loved ones, who wouldn't trade you for the world. In a way it's selfish, yes, because others don't really have the right to dictate how you view yourself. But if you hate yourself, what does that say about the people who will die for you? Farnese becomes a witch under the precocious Shirka. The amount of wisdom she gained along this journey is extraordinary and cold. Truly living on both sides of the spectrum, from heretic buster to heretic. Farnese performs real acts of God, and through intense battle experience, becomes a formidable sorcerer, even receiving praise from the sheltered wizards of Elven Island. Who would have thought that the little tyrant would go from here to here? She has finally allowed life to shape her into a character within a much larger story. A story where the utterances of each and every page are written with a quill dipped in the ink of time, etching irreversible events into the logs of history. Our history. I gotta say it, Farnese is a cold character. I just had this thought one day, I was like, bro, Farnese went from this heretic buster, Hall of Fame, pagan knee immobilizer, to a fucking witch, a mage, a dark art, a dark magic user. That shit is wild. I was like, bro, if anybody is character development, it is Farnese. Look at how she was introduced and look at her end result. That is crazy. There's other characters in Berserk that have perfect character development. Honestly, look at Guts. Keep it a bean. But Farnese's character development is so polarizing. If the Guts that we find in chapter 364 meets the Guts that is in chapter 1, they won't clash too much. It's just the Guts in chapter 364 will just look down upon the Guts in chapter 1. But also, chapter 364 Guts will feel jealous of chapter 1 Guts because he doesn't feel the pain that he has to live with now. But if you look at Farnese, her shit is just so easy to see. If you take the Farnese we first see and compare it to the Farnese we see in chapter 364, they would definitely be trying to pack each other up, and they won't even recognize each other. Anyway, I appreciate y'all niggas for watching. Kitchen left cheek slapping her right. I'll see y'all when I see y'all, man. She's a pimple and she's trying to get popped by Hulk Jr. himself.